Ich sitze oben. Charlie, wie sieht's aus? So, liebe Freunde, ihr dürft jetzt einmal mitsingen, mit Klatschen, mit Tanzen, ihr dürft euch ausziehen. Runter mit den Lumpen, Ladies and Gentlemen. Es sind ja 14 Grad. Das ist der Song von Jule Taubitz und können doch einmal richtig Lärm machen. Für die Zweitplatzierte und Europameisterin Jule Taubitz!
The home of sliding activities since 1905. This track in Oberhof, Germany, back in 1931, hosted the first ever FIBT World Championships, a two-man bobsleigh event, and since then has really become a home to the sport of luge as the EBERSPÄCHER Luge World Cup visits Oberhof for the second time this season. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. 2 races already underway and completed here in Oberhof on this opening day of World Cup action. Both races won by the Austrians. And now we turn our attention to the men's doubles competition, where Austria figures to battle with Germany and Latvia as well in this competition. And to tell us a little bit more about this track is a woman who just earlier this morning made her way down in competition from Team Ireland. It's Elsa Desmond. Elsa, welcome back to the microphone.
Thank you for having me back, Tim, as always. Yes, I was on the track here today, so I know exactly what the ice conditions are like, exactly what the profiles are like. It is warm here today. The air is wet. The ice is fast, but it's not hard, so there's a lot of control that these athletes have. The doubles start from the women's start, same as the women did in the previous race. These top corners, they're trying to build the speed as they come towards this challenging section, which is the 8, 9, 10 section. This is really crucial, getting this right. If they get this wrong, they're going to have problems coming into this curve 11-12 transition. We might see people hitting this right wall here on the entrance to 12, and the other place we might see problems is this exit here of 13 before the long straight. People might be hitting that wall on the exit, and then they come into this long Kreisel at the finish, into this uphill braking section. People might hit after the Kreisel, but it's not important for this race as the finish line is just there.
As always, our thanks to Felix Loch, Julian von Schleinitz for putting together that POV run and all of the associated graphics. As we get ready on a warm day here, great overview here in Thuringia. Saw a rainbow in the distance a little bit ago, and it's mixed conditions, but one thing we know, Elsa, it's warm today, but another thing we also know is that warmth doesn't necessarily negate the possibility of a track record.
No, we've seen track records already this morning in both the women's doubles and the women's events. It has been sort of getting warmer through the day, so it might be a little bit slower on the ice this afternoon, but certainly there is possibility there that we could see some good times.
Track record by Aert and Beneken at the start was set in, well, it was set 2 years ago, but then the two Tobys, Wendl and Arlt, set the start record just last month at the other World Cup that was held here. As far as the race goes, we have 19 sleds. That's actually one of the smaller fields of doubles men in the last few weeks as they will move from the qualifying into the seeded group. The Tobys lead the way, Wendl and Arlt in the World Cup standings. Only a 9-point lead over Latvia, but significantly just last week, the Tobys, or a couple of weeks ago, won for the 55th time on the World Cup to move into first place all alone. And that was last week.
That is such an enormous achievement. I can't even imagine having that many titles to my name.
With the official anthem of the FIL.
We'll see Dominic Fischnaller pictured on your screen. We'll see him tomorrow in men's singles. Also coming up tomorrow, after the men's singles race, we have mixed singles and mixed doubles for the second time this season. And also the athletes have to be pretty excited about that.
Absolutely. This new mixed event has taken over from the sprint event. And most of the athletes are really excited about it. Lots of athletes that never got the opportunity to take part in the sprint event are getting to do this mixed event, particularly some of the smaller nations, such as myself, Japan, Argentina. Nations that we never saw really getting into the sprint are getting this opportunity to do this new event, to hit that paddle and to take part in a relay, which they can't normally do.
No question about it. Based on the performance of Switzerland's Natalie Mogg earlier today, she and Alex could actually be top 5 contenders tomorrow.
Absolutely. So exciting to see some of these nations with only 1 or 2 athletes getting to participate in this event and getting solid results.
As you just saw really briefly in that last shot, Marcus Prock in the house, 3-time Olympic medalist, is the sport director for this dominating Austrian program. We've got 3 Austrian teams in today's race, all of whom have won World Cup races at some point in their career, but it all begins with this team from Romania, Stefan Handaric and Sebastian Molcha. And I'm not sure, are they slated to go with Raluca and Mihaela tomorrow in the doubles?
Yeah, so the other Romanian team, Marian Schoepf, has injured himself. He got an injury in training, I believe 2 days ago, of his elbow. So that double isn't competing here this weekend. So we will see this Romanian double tomorrow in the mixed event for the doubles.
This team finished in 5th place in the Nations Cup yesterday, the qualifying race, or actually, yeah, that was 5th. There were 2 German teams in the top 5 that were not qualifiers.
They'll just be looking to put down a solid run here. I know this is a track they've had some problems on in the past. Still quite a young double. I think this is only their 2nd senior season. Quite a late entrance there, and it just catches them on the end.
First time we've seen that today. We've seen some sleds go over, but that's the first time we saw that hard exit of 13. If I recall, last month this happened quite a bit.
So I think they might have changed the profile a little bit on the end of that curve 13 today. Lots of the women were having problems there. I think there's a little bit more ice on that exit, which is just pushing people over towards that right wall. And these guys had a very late entrance into curve 13. They went high, they dropped down, and then they got height on the end. You can just see this here. They went too late into that curve 13. They went really high, dropped down, and then they climbed again on this exit, and they just flipped. There was no way of saving it then.
Yeah, that's too bad. And when there are only 19 sleds in run number 1, and 18 will qualify for the second heat, they're going to need another team to turn that sled over,
yeah,
for them to get a second heat.
That's really tough from them, and we never want to hope that someone crashes. So a really tough day for them. But as we said, we'll get to see them compete again tomorrow in that mixed double event and have a redemption run.
Team Slovakia, who we will not see in mixed doubles because Slovakia is not fielding any women in singles or doubles, at least in the first half of the season.
We did see Slovakia have a women's double last week in Winterberg. But those...
Go ahead.
So that women's double that we saw last week in Winterberg, they are still juniors, and so they are now training, I believe, for the St. Moritz World Championships on the junior circuit. So they haven't come here, and they won't be coming out to North America and Asia with the Slovakian team.
By the way, for those of you ardent luge fans who also follow Naturbahn, the natural track, Slovakia placed 2 sleds in the top 5 last weekend at the World Championships in natural luge.
Not having the cleanest run here. We heard them hit that wall on the entrance to curve 12, and again some problems higher up in the top section, but they did keep the sled shiny side down and get a nice finish.
42.137 is their run 1 down time. As a point of comparison, that time is, let's see, it's not that far off the track record, 42.137. Oh no, I forgot that it's about a full 0.8 of a second. That doesn't mean it's not going to fall.
Absolutely not. They just hit here a little bit early into curve 11. You could see them just bouncing off. And again, they hit early into curve 12. Just some little problems there, but overall quite a solid run for them, and they will get their second run.
That's right. Any team that gets a finishing time now is guaranteed a run number 2, as 18 will qualify. Only 1 entrant, as has been the case really for as many years as I can remember, dating back to Walker Smith. Canada's had 1 men's doubles team. Over the past several years, it has been these 2, Devin Wardrope and Cole Zajanski. Yesterday, they finished in 2nd in the Nations Cup for the 2nd weekend in a row. They were on the podium. They had won that race the weekend before.
Absolutely fantastic for them to be getting those solid results, and I'm sure they'll be very excited for the next race going into World Championships on a home track in Whistler.
No question about it. Even though they lost their home track in Calgary, this will be now their new home track in Whistler. These two, both Calgarians.
Absolutely. We won't be seeing them in the mixed double event tomorrow. Nice exit there, but just steering too much to the right before they hit the Kreisel. We won't be seeing this double tomorrow in the mixed event, as they don't have their women's double here with them this week.
Right, I was wondering about that. Podolsky and her teammate, the young women's doubles team, they appeared in a couple of World Cups. Is there a junior event this week?
So I'm not sure they're actually still young enough to go to junior. I suspect they're not here because this is a very challenging track for the doubles, and they are still a very junior doubles team. This is only their first season working together as a pairing, and maybe they felt they weren't ready for this track yet. A nice run here from these men.
So perhaps that young women's doubles team is already back home at the Whistler Sliding Center, getting some extra reps in advance of the World Championship. First of two from the United States, Mueller and Haugsjaa. They had a crash in the first run of the first race of their first season on the World Cup. That was in Lillehammer, and they've come back to have top 10 finishes in every individual run since then. Their best result has been a 6th place. That was in Altenburg.
Yeah, it's great to see some of these younger doubles coming up onto the circuit. Doubles fields are getting smaller over the years. We have seen them reduce in size, not getting so many pairings coming through, so it's great to see some of these younger athletes.
They put down the second fastest start time. This is a sled that, at least this season, has been traditionally quick on the bottom part of the track.
Putting together a nice run here, a little bit high on the end of that curve 11, but managed the exit really well. They are safely in the green at the moment. And a nice exit and transition there into the Kreisel.
Mueller and Haugsjaa of the United States to the finish line, hitting hard. That won't cost them a lot of time, although it may bump that knee or that hip a little bit of pain, as it's USA over Canada and Slovakia very early here in run number 1 from OBERHOF.
Yeah, those bumps on the finish won't really cost them much time in terms of today's race, but something to watch out for as we go into the mixed event tomorrow. Just this replay here, that really nice exit of curve 13. You can see him stretching out, putting his head back, really trying to get that aerodynamic position. Just a big hit there out of the Kreisel. Not an issue for today, but tomorrow when we have the paddle in the mixed event, those are going to be causing problems.
Will that paddle be in the exact same location we saw it last month for the team relay?
Yes, I believe it will be. Although the mixed event paddle is slightly smaller than the relay paddle, so we are aiming for a smaller target.
And they start from their respective start areas. So at least in doubles, that won't make a difference, but in singles, you have 2 different start zones. Now we have the Polish team, Chmielewski and Kowalewski. No matter how they do here, we will expect to see them tomorrow in mixed doubles as well, with the team of Domovic and Pawlowska, who earlier today had a very respectable result in women's doubles.
Yeah, quite an experienced team now, this Polish pairing. They have dropped back into the red, but there is plenty of track still to come. As
all
they
of
come to the green.
These next several athletes, all part of the seeded group. These are the athletes who have performed the best over the past 3 weeks. And it's interesting as we say, well, this is actually, let's concentrate on this. Only 100th separates the USA and Poland right now. But trouble here.
Problems there in that straightaway. You saw him put his head back and just the sled started skidding for him, and he had to tap his feet down just to keep control.
So a 2nd place time right now sandwiched in between the 2 North American sleds. So Elsa, traditionally on the World Cup, the seeded group is determined by the best results over the previous 3 weeks. But as we head to the World Championships, there's a little bit of a different factor in there involving the countries where the races were held, correct?
There is. I always forget exactly how it works, but I know that the seeding does work slightly different at the World Championships to what we'd see at the World Cup.
As I understand it, the fact that the past 3 races are all held in Germany, they incorporate the Latvian race back into that equation. So obviously they don't necessarily give the big advantage to the team that hosted 3 in a row.
Of course, it's always tricky with so many tracks being in Germany to make sure that seeding is done fairly for an important race like the World Championships, where so many athletes, their funding is dependent on that race, and their selections for next season are dependent on it as well.
The second of 2 from the United States, the 2022 Olympians, Zach Di Gregorio and Sean Hollander, just sitting outside of the top 10 on the World Cup standings, 4 points behind the Italians, who are in 10th. Quick start time.
Yeah, the Americans have an amazing start facility, so these athletes will be training all summer to get those starts, as we saw a really good start time there, but they have now dropped back into the red by 8 thousandths of a second. Looking relatively clean here. Just losing time.
USA against USA, with all of the top Italians, Austrians, and Germans still to come, skidding and fighting it here into 14.
Yeah, just a little tap of that right wall, but they did enough in that Kreisel just to go ahead of their teammates at the finish.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, usually if you have that mistake, as they had, and it wasn't a big mistake, but that will bite you about 50 yards down the track.
They did have a slightly cleaner Kreisel than their teammates. Their teammates went sort of middle into the Kreisel, which is that big 360-degree corner at the finish. We want to be going as close to the right wall into that Kreisel as possible, so we did see a bit more looping from their teammates in that Kreisel, and I think that probably lost them some more time.
Some great cheering you saw there at the top from teammate Sophia Kirkby. As the green light, no inspection for this sled, at least here in run number 1. As USA holds it down, the top 2 spots ahead of Poland. We move to our first from Italy. In fact, our first of 2 in a row. So Manuel Rieder and Simon Kainzwaldner, the Südtirolians, 31 and 30 years old.
Very experienced doubles athletes at this point. I believe Simon also won a Youth Olympic medal in Innsbruck, so they have a lot of experience on this sled, and they'll be looking to get a good time here.
That's right, Elsa. They both, in fact, competed in singles at those Youth Olympic Games. They're looking to make their first Olympic team, and of course, if they do, it will be in their home nation, on their home track in Cortina. How's the progress on that track?
We haven't had an update since before Christmas, but I believe everything is on track, and obviously the Italians will be keeping their fingers crossed because they're really going to be wanting that home track. Nice exit there of curve 13, really pressing that head back, but they are still in the red. I'm not sure there's enough track for them to make it up.
In fact, they lose another 0.06 of a second. Disgruntled look on the face of Armin Zugler down there in the coach's zone. Zugler, not only a coach of this Italian team, and not only a member of the executive board of the International Luge Federation, he's also probably the greatest luger in the history of the sport. 6
Absolutely.
Olympics, 6 Olympic medals.
One of the biggest names in this sport, regardless of whether you're an athlete or a spectator. I'm sure it is a name that everybody knows.
As usual, a great crowd of luge fanatics here in Thuringia for the second time in a month. A World Cup race being held here in Germany's OBERHOF region. The second, as promised, in a row from Germany. Ivan Nagler, Fabian Malleier, they do have experience at the Olympic Games. Now 25 and 27 years old. No podiums this year for them, but a 4th place finish in Innsbruck, which until that Cortina track is finished, has long been their home track.
Slightly slower off the start than the Americans, but they are now into the green. Looking really nice in this top section. Yeah, Italy just struggling to find any sort of consistency with podium finishes. Oh, really high there on the end of 11. Big skids into curve 12. That will have cost them a lot of time as they drop back into the red. Did well to control it on the exit of 13, but that will have lost them a lot of time.
That will drop them to 4th, 5th place perhaps here. 6th, 0.3 of a second off. So subpar showing for the 2 Italian teams back-to-back. They're in 5th and 6th place. So a check of the standings just under halfway through this race. The USA first and second, Poland third, Canada in fourth. Then you have the Italians. Of course, still ahead, the Latvians, all of the German sleds, and all of the Austrians.
A disappointing run for them, just so high on the end of that curve 11. Just trying to control it here, but a big skid going into curve 12. Not the run they would have been hoping to put down.
Well, when we were here a month ago for the World Cup stop number 4 in Oberhof, the winners were these two youngest of the German doubles athletes, Hannes Orlamuender, Paula Gubitz. That was their second career World Cup win, their first ever in the 2-run format. And they've struggled in the last couple of weeks. In fact, Paula was pretty blunt when he said, we hope we can shake off all of the crap from the last few World Cups as we return home and then get ready for the World Championships.
I believe this is their home track, so they do have a huge amount of experience here. They've got a lot of runs down this track. They are 900ths ahead at the moment, and they'll just be looking to put that experience down into this run.
One would expect.
Looking really nice here, 2/10 ahead, putting down a very clean run so far.
Here's the crux of the course, and it's a perfect exit of 13. Well done.
Really good run from these guys here.
Orlamuender and Gubitz. That's a 41.746, so that's still over 0.4 of a second off of the track record. Shaking their heads, always a perfectionist.
Yeah, they had a couple of small issues. They looked like they had a bit of a problem on the start. Quite a rough transition into that first corner for them. Maybe had a couple of other small issues, but in general, it was a really solid run for them.
Germany out in front, 2 more Germans still to come, but now we have the team from China. Starting bib number 10 for Jubayi and Hoy. That would seem a little late. Usually you see China very early out of the Nations Cup or very late, but that was the luck of the draw. And speaking of the draw, Elsa, were you there? They did an interesting thing to draw the athletes yesterday.
I didn't go myself, but I did see what happened. They had children pulling the numbers for the draw for these seeded groups, which is great to involve. Only one athlete paddling there on the start. I have to wonder if the other athlete has an injury.
That's exactly what it is, and we actually saw that last week in Altenburg, just choosing not to paddle. A shoulder injury by the backman, Hoi.
That's really difficult. Obviously, one person's power is nowhere comparable to 2, so they will have a slow start, and they will probably then stay in the red for the rest of this run after that. They are looking quite clean, though. They're having a solid run in terms of the lines.
Still given that start issue and usual lack of speed on the Chinese sleds, we're probably looking at 9th or 10th place out of the 10 that have come down. 9th, 42.285. So only that Romanian sled that crashed to open up the competition, the only team trailing the Chinese. That puts them in run 2.
Yeah, for these guys at this point, if they know they're carrying an injury, they're just going to be looking to collect those overall World Cup points and keep putting down some solid runs and gaining the experience. They know going off the start with only one person paddling that they're not going to produce the results that they're capable of because they will have lost so much time on that crucial start.
With 4 podiums, including 2 victories this season, Martins Bots and Roberts Plume of Latvia sit in 2nd place, just 9 points out of the World Cup overall lead. But notably, their 2 non-podiums were a 6th place last week in Winterberg and a 7th, lowest showing of the season, right here in Oberhof on December 14th.
I'm sure they'll be looking to make a redemption run here today and improve on that finish that they had here in December.
Olympic medalists from Beijing in 2022 as part of Latvia's team relay.
In the green on the start there. Fastest start we've seen so far today.
A 7.311.
all of these Latvian athletes coming out of Sigulda, such strong drivers. So a driving track like OBERHOF does suit their style of sliding.
And like Sigulda, this track features a Kreisel at the finish.
Dropping back into the red there behind the German athletes. No major problems, but just not finding the speed. Really nice line there. Head was quite high in the first half of that straight, but then pressing it back and getting that aerodynamic position.
Right, I noticed that as they put down a second place, that Martins brought that head up. It's not that characteristic, but that speaks volumes about those final few curves here in OBERHOF.
Absolutely, it's not an easy track here. And I have to wonder if maybe they had some problems in training, and that's why he kept his head a little bit high.
As opposed to you, Elsa, you had that head tucked back all the way today in your race, I'm sure, right?
I mean, as much as I could.
I know some athletes actually put black tape on their shields to remind themselves to keep the head down even when they're taking that little peek down track.
And that was something I actually did until a couple of years ago. All of my photos from the Olympics, you would notice I had black tape on my visor. It's something quite common to help you be aware of how high your head is.
This team has made their way into the top 5 in the World Cup standings. Yannick Mueller, Mueller and Frauscher, the 2 Austrians, coming off of 3 consecutive weekends on the podium. 3rd in Sigulda, 3rd in Altenburg, 3rd in Winterberg.
Austria really doing so well this season. Everything's going right for them. They're good on the start. They've got a good sled setup, and they've generally been driving really, really well. Just dropping into the red off that start, but there's a lot of track still to go, and we know the Austrians are good at picking up time down the bottom, so they'll definitely be looking to build momentum from those previous 3 races.
We certainly saw that earlier today in both the women's doubles and women's singles, where the eggless sleds just turned on the afterburners down below.
Looking nice here down the track at the moment.
They were 800ths back, now it's 1200ths, not trending in their direction. Obviously, Orlamuender and Gubitz crushed one moments ago.
Just having to work a little bit down that straight to stay off that right wall. Only small corrections, but that will have cost them time compared to the German sled.
No doubt about it, 1800ths out of the lead, just 700ths behind the second place sled, and well out in front of the 2 USA sleds who are 4th and 5th.
The Austrians, along with the Americans and the Latvians, have got into this shouting on the start. You can see their coaches behind them really making some noise and encouraging them on the start. And this is where they just had to work a little bit hard down that straight to stay off that right wall, but then they had to steer back into that wall to get that early entrance, that right wall entrance into the Kreisel. The
red light suggests a little bit of a technical check, among other things, for these athletes before they head back up the hill for the start of run number 2. Now, while Yannick Mueller and Mueller and Frauscher have 3 podiums, all 3rd in the last 3 races, their 2 teammates right here, Tomasz Steu and Steu and Kindl, also have 3 podiums, all 3rd place, and those were the first 3 races. So in 6 races, 6 podiums.
That's such an amazing achievement. Kindl, I know, did pick up a bit of an injury in Altenburg, but he seems to be back on form now coming into this week.
Top 4 in every race. Kindl, whom Elsa just mentioned, perennially in the top hunt in both doubles and singles. That's rare these days in the sport of luge.
Absolutely. I think he's the only man doing both at the moment. We've got a few on the women's side, but as far as I'm aware, he's the only man doing both. Ooh, problems there out of the curve 13, having to work really hard down that straight, but they kept it off the walls.
That was impressive. It was costly because they could have made a run at the top without those problems. But if we check out that transition again between 13 and 14, Elsa, talk us through what Tomas had to do just to keep the sled off of the wall.
Yeah, let's see if we're going to get this replay here. So this is them hitting a bit early into that curve 13. And then just getting pressure towards that right wall, rolling back quite hard, really having to work hard down that straight, just doing lots of corrections just to keep it in that straight line and not touch those walls. Luckily, the ice is quite soft today, so it didn't look like he was having any skidding. It was just lots of correcting.
An impressive piece of driving from the Olympic bronze medalist. Of course, next up we have the Olympic silver medalist, and following the Olympic gold medalist. This is Tony Aegert, who took bronze and silver in each of the last 2 Olympic Games, then retired and came back this year with his new bottom man, Flo Mueller. They're 13 years apart. Aegert, the mentor, Mueller, the protege, and they won the World Cup opener, but have been hard-pressed to get back on the podium since.
It just shows how much it impacts an athlete when you do change pairings on these doubles. You get so used to the style of one person sliding that it can be quite tricky when you change to a different backman.
Sure, Diana's learning that as well, and it was a breakout performance for Eidberger earlier today as she made it onto the podium. Problems
Rough
here.
transition. That will have cost them a lot of time, those problems through that 8, 9, 10 section. And again, just hitting this wall here.
This is unbelievable, Elsa, and I don't know what to attribute it to because, bar none, no one in today's race has made more runs in men's doubles down this track than Tony Aegert.
Absolutely. He just looked a little bit messy really right from the start. Lots of small problems and then those big problems coming through 8, 9, 10. Really not what we'd usually see from this athlete. This is where their big problems really started. A really rough entrance there into 9, hitting before curve 10. And then a rough transition into 11. And again here, problems on that exit of the Kreisel. We're seeing, sorry, of the curve 13. We're seeing a lot of athletes having problems on that exit of 13 today. And it felt a little bit like the profile was slightly different to in training.
Despite all of the problems, it's still a 5th place showing and will probably be no worse than 7th at the end of the run as we get set for the final German sled. I say it each week, and it bears repeating. Why not celebrate the greatest ever? They're the World Cup leaders. They are the 6-time Olympic gold medalists when you add the relay events with men's doubles. And last week with their win in Winterberg, Toby Wendl and Toby Arlt became the all-time winningest World Cup lugers as well, with career victory number 55.
So much experience on one set and a start record there for them.
It's amazing, and they said it at the beginning of the season. Toby Arlt said physical conditioning, that's the biggest challenge now. They obviously have the technical experience, but at age 37, they're working hard to stay among the best.
Absolutely, they have the technique, they have the technology, it's just keeping that power. Just a little bit of a skid it sounded like there, but looking really nice down this track, nice and clean.
Unbelievable, and I'm not sure what this can compare to as they do it with an exclamation point, a track record, a 1/10 of a second up on the rest of the field. The Tobys just keep getting better. They have been sliding together. They're like a married couple since they were little kids in Berchtesgaden. And now 30 years later, they're still setting records.
Absolutely phenomenal.
They're kind of making a run. Earlier we talked about Armin Zugler. They're looking to make it to another Olympics 4 in a row. Now does not seem that unlikely.
Certainly not. They are just a formidable force within this sport. Start record and track record. Absolutely amazing.
Well, one more remaining here among the seeded group of athletes, or the ones that we expect will contend. But the Germans just put down a huge statement, and the world champions have all they can just to be in the top 3 right now. Juri Gatt, Ricardo Schoepf, they will wear that world championship bib for at least this week as we head to the next world championships in 2 weeks in Canada.
But it also shows that the ice conditions are holding up here. The fact that we were able to get a track record 15 sleds in, with only a few sleds still to go, we can expect the track to hold up for the whole of this run.
Sure. Only one podium this year for this pair of Austrians, but that was last weekend, a second-place finish in Winterberg. More to the point, they finished 4th at the last race on this track.
Looking nice, but they are 2 tenths behind already.
Yeah, that's looking at like a 5th or 6th place, but we know that Austrians can stop the bleeding and reverse the trend down at the bottom.
Just not able to on this run, not able to find the speed on this track that they would have liked.
3 more still remain, but for all intents and purposes, the top of the leaderboard is well set and reminiscent of earlier today in women's singles. The top 7 include 6 from Germany and Austria.
We know this is a sport dominated by a very select group of nations, and we are seeing that reflected in both of the doubles disciplines today, although we did have some nice variety within the women's side. Really nice exit there of curve 13. Just not able to find the speed, though, down the bottom.
The only nation also in the top 7, along with Germany and Austria, is Latvia. Those are the experienced Olympian spots in Plume. Here are the young teenagers. Raymond's Baltgalvis, oldest Jakseboga. This is just their 2nd or 3rd World Cup race together. Their best result, a 15th place in the High Sauerland last week, Winterberg, Germany. We talked about it, Elsa, Jonas and I, during the women's singles race. That coach that constantly yells at the top, is he cheering or does he sound like an animal in distress?
I'm not sure if it's to motivate the athletes or to scare them into performing well, but it does seem to work for these Latvian sleds. Putting down a relatively good run, couple of small mistakes and a bit of a rough transition, but they are looking quite clean down here. Ooh, problems on the end of 11 there. Did well to correct on the entrance to 12.
This is definitely the most excitement we've seen all day. The women's singles and women's doubles had a few little incidents, but it seems like nothing is safe here in the men's doubles race.
Absolutely not. Some problems there for them, costing them some time, but they have guaranteed themselves a place in the 2nd run. Still quite a young double. They're just going to be gaining experience, building on their experience and working towards the next couple of seasons.
Once again, no relay this weekend, but tomorrow after men's singles, it will be the mixed singles and mixed doubles.
This was just that problem there on the end of curve 11. They did well to control it on the entrance to 12 and not go late into that corner.
2 more remaining here in run number 1. Then we'll have a short break before the final heat of the day. And from one set of teenagers to another. This is the Ukrainian team of Maxim Panchuk, Andrei Muts, 18 and 17 years old, respectively. I have little to no biographical material on these two, Elsa, and I'm sure you don't know much more, other than the fact that we both know Ukraine brings a lot of athletes every week to the races, and that's a good sign.
Absolutely. It's so fantastic to see them out here and competing, and also fantastic to see their teammate Anton making it into the seeded group on the men's side this week, which is not something we see regularly from the singles athletes from Ukraine.
That's right. 9th place last week. He's had as high as 7th place on the World Cup. Ukraine was on the podium in a team relay earlier this season.
Some problems there through the 7, 8, 9, 10 section, and again an early hit there to 12, very late there into 13. They did well to hold it on the exit there. Still a very young double, as we've said, so they're just going to be gaining experience on these tracks, building for the future, and Taras looks reasonably happy with that run.
Absolutely. Everything is relative, and the fact that they make it down safely, they probably nailed a couple of corners. That's all you're asking for.
Absolutely. Everyone has their own goals coming into these races. We're not all aiming to finish in first place. Some of us are aiming for a 2nd run. Some of us are aiming for personal best times. So he seems happy with that result for this young double, and they'll be happy to get into the 2nd run.
Back-to-back Ukrainian teams, their more experienced teammates, Hoi and Kachmar, are coming up next. And it certainly bears repeating from time to time during the season. And we hear it in the interviews with the Ukrainian athletes, and Andrei Manzi put it best after that podium in Sigulda, that their thoughts are never too far away from what's still happening in their country, and they appreciate the fact that they can travel the world in safety, but they have a lot of friends and family that they're thinking about. So heavy hearts for all of these Ukrainian athletes from week in to week out while they try to perform their best on the World Cup circuit.
Absolutely. I have a huge amount of respect for all of these athletes. I can't even imagine what it's like to be worrying about your friends and family at home the whole time that you're racing.
This is the final team of run number 1. They will cut the field down to 18 for the second heat, so unless they have some sort of major crash here, this will be taking it easy, putting themselves in the best position as possible to move up a few places in run number 2.
Please don't jinx it, Tim.
That's true.
Looking solid so far. Nice entrance there into curve 12. This is that crux. Just a tap there on the right wall, but holding it well.
Noticeably slower than the last several sleds. But they do hang on. 17th place. And while not spectacular, this pair has been consistent all season long, with all of their results ranging between 15th and 18th place.
Just struggling to find the speed there. There was no huge mistakes, but just not getting the time they wanted. This is very much a track where you have to relax, you have to absorb those entrances and exits. I wonder if they were just a little tense on the sled, or maybe there's a bit of a sled setup issue going on, because not the time they'd expect to be getting on this track from that sort of a run. Just a bit of a tap here on that exit. And that nice early entrance into curve 14.
Is that Julia Tanitska, teammate on the right side, who earlier today had a top 20 result in women's singles. So the Ukrainians are done, and so is run number 1 of the men's doubles competition, OBERHOF, Germany. As we will check out the standings, it's not as tight as the earlier races today. You have some pretty big differentials between some of those, but still a pretty spirited battle for the podium. And Elsa, as a final word, nearly all of these top 8 teams made some mistake. Other than the Tobys, they made some mistake along the way. So a lot of room to clean it up.
Absolutely, a lot of room for improvement in this second run. As you said, everyone's quite spread out, but anything can happen in Luge, and we'll see what comes on the second run.
Okay, run number 2 coming your way at about 2:50 local time when we resume action for the final heat of the day. So until then, Elsa and I are going to take a little break, and stay tuned for the exciting conclusion of day 1 of World Cup Luge from OBERHOF coming up soon.
Mit einem großen Schiff, der Captain auf dem Rücken.